You ever notice how the Empire didn't really start anything new? It just took what was already there and slapped on a fresh coat of evil? Like if your toxic workplace added stormtroopers to the Zoom call and called it synergy. But seriously, when Palpatine declared the birth of the Galactic Empire, he wasn't creating a monster. He was revealing one that already had a name badge, a corner office, and way too much influence over your insurance policy. And here's the wild part. Nobody really stopped him. No Jedi burst into the Senate with a dramatic monologue. No senator flung their cloak and shouted, "This is madness." They all just nodded along like they were approving a slightly aggressive tax plan. You can practically hear the HR department filing it under administrative restructuring, while democracy quietly fell down an elevator shaft. Now, don't get me wrong, the Jedi were powerful, wise, mystical, and apparently horrible at reading the room. They spent more time debating whether Anakin was emotionally stable than questioning why the Chancellor had emergency powers longer than most galactic lifespans. Meanwhile, Palpatine's out here giving the Sith version of a TED Talk, and no one even flinches. What really gets me is how clean it all looked. The Empire didn't rise out of rubble, it rose out of procedure. Budget meetings turned into battle strategies. Peacekeeping became occupation, and nobody blinked. Because the scariest kind of evil isn't loud and chaotic. It's neat, organized, and wears matching uniforms. But underneath all that order was rot. The Empire didn't invent cruelty, just streamlined it. It took the Republic's worst habits and gave them an anthem, made it all look official. Sanctioned, even necessary. And the average citizen just kept going to work, trying not to make eye contact with the guy in the black helmet and a respirator that sounded like a broken coffee maker. In this video, we're going to break down how the Galactic Empire didn't rise from the ashes of the Republic. It was the Republic, just bolder, shinier, and way more into fascist aesthetics. We'll look at how Palpatine didn't conquer the galaxy, he inherited it. Why the Senate stayed open for business during a full-blown dictatorship, and how the Jedi were set up to fail by the very system they thought they were saving. There's a moment in Revenge of the Sith where you realize something isn't quite right. It's not just the Jedi dying or the clone troopers turning heel. It's the quiet fact that when the Republic becomes the Empire, most people just kind of shrug. Palpatine doesn't march in with a red lightsaber and a manifesto. He just changes the name, tosses in a few thunderclaps, and keeps most of the same staff. Think about it, the Senate doesn't get disbanded until A New Hope, almost 20 years later. Until then, it's business as usual, just with a little more fascism sprinkled on top. Maz Amida is still standing next to the throne. Bail Organa is still wearing fancy robes and trying to make change through committees. Even the stormtroopers are just clones with a paint job and worse aim. The more you dig into it, the more obvious it becomes. The Empire wasn't a new system, it was a facelift on the same tired political machine. The same trade routes, the same corruption, the same useless deliberation. It's like putting a fresh coat of paint on a collapsing building and calling it a skyscraper. And let's not forget how easily the military fell in line. These weren't new soldiers being indoctrinated. They were clone commanders who'd spent years being told the Jedi were generals. Then overnight they were enemies. There's no rebellion from the troops because the culture was already primed for obedience, not reflection. It's almost comical how seamless it was. Like if your company fired the CEO, replaced the logo, and told you to salute the receptionist now, but you still clock in at 9 and leave at 5. Welcome to the Empire, it's the Republic, with mood lighting. What really drives you up the wall is how obvious all of this should have been. The signs weren't just there, they were screaming with a bullhorn wrapped in flashing red tape. Palpatine literally sat in full control of the war, and no one batted an eye. The Jedi knew it, the Senate knew it, even Grievous probably knew it, and still, nothing. The Jedi, for all their wisdom, acted like they were legally obligated to be dense. "We feel something is off," Mace Windu says, while Palpatine is practically cackling under his breath. They had the numbers, they had the Force, they had Yoda, but not one of them thought to question why the Republic gave emergency powers to a man whose face was slowly melting into a horror show. Then there's the Senate, a room full of the galaxy's supposed brightest minds, all collectively deciding that democracy was too inconvenient. They chose bureaucracy over backbone, comfort over consequence. You'd think one of them would raise a hand and go, "Wait, are we the bad guys now?" But no, they were too busy lobbying for tax breaks and parade funding. The real heartbreak isn't in the fall itself, it's in how many people trusted the system to protect them. The Jedi didn't see themselves as warriors for hire. They believed in justice, in peace, in safeguarding a galaxy that never truly valued them. And when the hammer came down, there was no trial, no warning, just betrayal. Order 66 wasn't just a massacre, it was a confession. A brutal admission that the Republic had never seen the Jedi as equals or allies. They were pawns, useful until inconvenient. The clones they'd bled beside turned on them in an instant, not because they hated them, but because they'd been conditioned to follow a system that didn't believe in moral choice. And then there's the civilians. People who had no idea what was really happening behind the curtain. Families who believed the empire would bring peace. Not because they were evil, but because they were tired. Tired of war, tired of politics, tired of the Jedi's cryptic sermons about balance while cities burned around them. When you look at someone like Ahsoka or Kanan, you don't just see survivors. You see people carrying the weight of a world that abandoned them. They didn't ask to be hunted, exiled, or forgotten. They were simply guilty of believing in something better. And in a galaxy that rewards obedience over hope, that belief is dangerous. It's easy to cheer when rebels fight back. It's harder to reckon with the silence that allowed the Empire to rise. The Republic didn't collapse, it gave up. And in that silence, the lights went out, one by one. What's terrifying is how effective the Empire was at redefining reality. With a few edits, a few speeches, and some sharp uniforms, they made tyranny look like order. The Death Star wasn't just a weapon, it was a branding statement. A glowing middle finger to diplomacy that said, "This is the future now, get used to it." The genius of Palpatine wasn't just in deception, it was in clarity. He understood something the Republic never did. People don't want freedom if it comes with too much chaos. They want security, certainty, a galaxy that runs on time. So he gave them that, at the cost of everything else. Look at the imperial aesthetic, the brutalist architecture, the militarized cities, the symphony of marching boots echoing through sterile corridors. It was terrifying because it worked. It erased individuality in favor of unity. And somehow, that felt like progress to people who never got a choice in the first place. Even the propaganda machine was awe-inspiring in its reach. Holovids of stormtroopers saving towns, Imperial cadets being framed as heroes, Jedi painted as traitorous fanatics. The narrative flipped overnight, and no one stopped to question it, because it was easier to believe in a strong empire than a weak republic. But even in the darkest moments of the galaxy, there were sparks. Little acts of resistance that refused to be crushed under the Empire's boot. Bail Organa didn't just vanish into politics, he built the seeds of rebellion under the noses of his peers. Mon Mothma risked everything to speak the truth, and they weren't alone. The clones who disobeyed Order 66 didn't do it because they were defective. They did it because they remembered. Remembered camaraderie, loyalty, purpose beyond orders. Rex, Wolf, Gregor. They weren't anomalies, they were reminders that identity can survive programming. Then there were the Jedi who lived in shadows but still fought. Canon training Ezra wasn't just mentorship, it was preservation. A living legacy that the Force wasn't dead, just dormant. That even in exile, the light could wait patiently for its time to return. And of course, the civilians. The farmers on Lothal, the slicers in Coruscant's underbelly, the smugglers who became heroes. The galaxy was never short on courage, it was just waiting for someone to light the fuse. And when it did, the fire spread faster than the Empire could stamp it out. Hope isn't loud, and it's never convenient, but it's stubborn. And in a galaxy that forgot what it meant to believe in something better, hope was the first act of rebellion. So in the end, what do we make of it all? The Republic's fall wasn't a tragedy of conquest, it was a failure of vigilance. The kind of slow-motion collapse you only notice once the credits roll. Palpatine didn't destroy the Republic, he revealed it. The system was already brittle, already bloated with self-interest, gridlock, and decay. All it took was one man with patience and vision to twist it into something monstrous. And everyone who let it happen did so because they were comfortable with the lie. The Empire wasn't born in darkness, it was built in daylight, with applause echoing through the Senate chamber. And by the time people realized the cost, the stormtroopers were already at the door. The Jedi were gone, the voices were silenced, and the flags had already changed. But maybe that's the lesson. That freedom isn't a guarantee, it's a responsibility. And when we outsource our courage to institutions, we risk losing both. The Republic's death wasn't sudden. It was sanctioned, approved, clapped for. The Empire was just the Republic with better branding. And by the time the galaxy figured it out, it had already bought the t-shirt. Thank you for watching the whole video. I make videos because of my love for Star Wars and Marvel. I've been asked countless times how I get my subtitles, and I generate them automatically with a tool I built. That same tool can be used here on my website. It's completely free and doesn't require signing up. My website contains the subtitle generator that is perfect for any video. Blogging post, where you can sign up with your email and receive notifications for when I post, and also my 3 channels. Critical Analysis Hub focuses on Star Wars and Marvel movies. Critical Analysis Hub Plus looks at Star Wars and Marvel shows. And Critical Analysis Hub XP centers on video games, like The Last of Us series, Jedi Survivor, and GTA 5. Thank you for being a fan.